All right, today I'm going to make, wow, this is moving. It's like getting seasick. A Chinese beef with broccoli in oyster sauce. I'm gonna use broccolini instead because I think it's a little more fun. It's a really good classic example of like the use of, you'll see cornstarch is so useful in Chinese cooking, and that's true in this dish as well. It helps sauce, like helps things fry, helps sauce just stick to food, which is why the flavors work so well in a lot of these Chinese recipes. So I'm gonna do that today. I want to start with the first two ingredients, which are, we're making the marinating sauce first, but I'm gonna start with the first two ingredients in the marinating sauce because it's cornstarch, a couple teaspoons of cornstarch, and a tablespoon or so of Chinese cooking wine, or you can use mirin for this. Mirin's a little sweeter, the Japanese sort of cooking wine, than Chinese cooking wine, but I'm just mixing them up because cornstarch doesn't mix all that well with things all the time, so just kind of want to get it dissolved first, and then I'll add the other ingredients and make the marinating sauce. That was actually a tablespoon of cornstarch and a tablespoon of Chinese cooking wine, Shaoxing wine. And then I've also added another tablespoon of oyster sauce. I like the Lee Kum Kee. And then a quarter teaspoon each of salt and sugar. And I'm gonna add some white pepper now, another quarter teaspoon, which I think is about 20 maybe, 20 grinds of it. So this is my marinating sauce. Now I'm gonna put cut up the meat and put it in here. Next thing going in, while that stuff's marinating, you wanna cut up the broccolini. I use broccolini, you can use broccoli. I use 3 bunches here. I try and leave it in pretty big pieces, just diagonal cuts across it. If I'm using part of a stem, and I like to use parts of some of it because it's good. I just kind of slice it up a little bit so it's thinner. And I'll use some of these bigger pieces of stem because why not? It's all pretty good. Just kind of thin it out a little bit. And meanwhile, I've got some hot water heating up because what I'm going to do is blanch this really quickly. So get a pot of hot water, make sure to put salt in it because like we talked about in other recipes, the salt, things migrate across the cell walls, and if you don't put things like salt in the water, then all the nutritional stuff in the plant wants to go into the water. If you put the salt in the water already, some of the stuff stays in the plant, and it also stays crunchier that way. I just think it loses a lot of its nutrients when you don't salt the water. So the recipe calls for a pound of flank steak, but the market didn't have any, so I actually got hanger steak, which may actually be a nicer cut of meat. It has a little more marbling in it. And then I cut it into these, kind of bite-sized pieces. Thin, cut across the grain, thin pieces. And what I'm gonna do now is put them all in the marinade. And use my hand to make sure they all get a chance to get the marinade on them. And then I'm going to grab some vegetable oil. Now the vegetable oil is the last ingredient. You don't want to add it until you've already sort of gotten the meat squeezed into the marinade. And then once you've done that, take a tablespoon of vegetable oil and put it in that and just squeeze it around them one more time. And then let this sit for about a half hour. Well, my video shut off there, but as you can see, I put the broccolini in the pot. I'm just cooking it for 3 or 4 minutes just to blanch it. Just to lightly cook it. Remember, put the salt in there. And then we're gonna take it. So while that was cooking, I made an ice bath here with some cold water. Well, I made ice, in a thing. We're gonna make an ice bath into that. Just some cold water into like a Tupperware. Then we take the boiled, blanched broccolini, pour that in a strainer. and then immediately put it in the ice water, which will stop it cooking. See, it's gonna move that around in there so that the ice dissolves, the water gets cold, and that will just stop the cooking really quickly. So, because you don't want these to not get crunchy, you want them to stay crunchy. All right, let them sit in there for a minute to make sure they completely stop cooking. While the broccolini is cooking, you want to get your ginger. You want 4 slices of ginger. So you want to peel it and then slice it. You want 2 cloves of garlic, just smashed and peeled. So you smash them and then they'll peel really easily. All right. And then we're also going to cut up an onion. I showed this in another video, but I'll show you again. You begin by cutting off the end with just cut off that end, put it down on the flat surface, cut it in half. Then we're gonna peel it. So I'll be back in a minute after I finish that. How to cut an onion. Take the half onion and you wanna cut these horizontal slices into it. Like 3 of them. Maybe more if it's a bigger onion. Then you cut like fan vertical slices towards the end across it. So you've got vertical slices here, horizontal slices here, and then you just take it and slice down the end. And it is diced. That is the easiest way to chop an onion. Okay. All right, we also need to make the stir frying sauce, and once again I'm beginning with the cornstarch. It's 2 teaspoons of cornstarch and then a couple tablespoons of water, just because cornstarch can be a little bit stubborn about mixing, so it's best to just do it right at the beginning. Okay, so got the cornstarch in there. Now there's a couple tablespoons of Chinese rice wine, or like I said, you could use mirin. Let's see, a couple tablespoons of that, 4 tablespoons of oyster sauce. So this is a 2 tablespoon spoon, so there's 4. Get all those in there. And there's also going to be a couple teaspoons of sugar. Plain granulated sugar, and a couple teaspoons of dark soy sauce, sugar, dark soy sauce, and sesame oil. A couple teaspoons of sesame oil. According, I'm running a little low on sesame oil. I think I had some more somewhere here. Oops, a little more of that. Is that everything? Let's see, cornstarch, water, oyster sauce, sesame oil, dark, yeah, that's everything. Okay, so having gotten everything in there, I'm just gonna once again take my smaller whisk. I'm just try and beat it all together. And that's gonna go in the middle of our stir fry. That's the sauce that we'll be cooking it in. Okay? Okay. Next up, cook the beef. I've got a wok here, my old wok, which I've had since I was a kid, I think. I've had the oil heating up in it for a bit, and I'm just going to dump all that beef we were marinating into it. And we're just going to cook it until it's all changed color. You don't want to try not to overcook it. They're thin slices and you're going to cook it a little more later. But we're going to cook it for a few minutes and you'll see pieces of it are now this color, Other pieces are still that more raw color. I'm gonna get it all from the red to the brown. Okay. So what you want to be really careful is you want to get this cooked. So there's, you don't want to see any more of the bloody parts, but you do not want to overcook this because we're going to cook it a little more, and you don't want it to become all tough. So I think this is pretty much there for me. Take the heat off. I'm going to just dump it somewhere where it can strain a little bit. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to just give it a quick scrub. You can do it with just a paper towel, but I find there's just a lot of caked on stuff, and you want to get rid of that before you cook the next part. And so I've cleaned the wok out, and I've got it on a very high heat, and I've put another tablespoon of oil in there. And then what we're going to do is just throw the ginger and the garlic in for maybe 30 seconds. What we're really just doing here is flavoring the oil that we're going to cook everything else in, and sort of seasoning what's going on in the wok. We're just going to cook these for about 30 seconds, which I suppose we're coming up on. The problem with filming is I can't have it. Oh, there's a timer right there. I'm an idiot. So after about 30 or maybe 40 seconds now, yeah, I'm just going to take a slotted spoon, maybe a little longer. I'll take these out. Just toss them in the center. All right, and once those are out, I'm going to add the onion that we chopped up earlier. Add that all to the pan, and that's going to cook about, let's see, maybe about 5 minutes till it's soft, kind of translucent. Okay, there is our onion. So I'm gonna let that go for about 5 minutes. As onions are done, I just added a couple tablespoons of rice wine to deglaze the pan. I'm just scraping the pan with the rice wine now as it's evaporating. And then I'm going to toss in our sauce that we made earlier, stir-fry sauce. Get that to kind of come to a boil in here, which it will do almost immediately. Just going to let it thicken up for a second. There we go. And then I'm going to add the beef back in. And the broccolini, which I drained a minute ago. And then I'm going to stir to combine all this stuff and let it cook just for 2 or 3 minutes until everything's heated through again. Okay? So you can see we've got the beef, the broccolini, the onions, and the sauce all in here cooking right now. It calls for like a bunch of broccolini, like one bunch. I put in 3 because I just don't, I think the extra greens just fill it out. I also think it's possible you could double the sauce in here because you're going to be putting it over rice, and extra sauce is never a bad thing. And that's my rice finishing up right now. You can hear it in the background. So, this is beef with oyster sauce and broccolini, and it is delicious looking. So I've got a bowl of rice here. I'm just going to take some of my beef and broccoli over the rice, and dinner. See you soon. Bye.